When you were growing up, what was the environment back then?
काफी खराब थी। मुझे याद है कि मेरे अबू हमको बोलते थे कि बस ये हमारी हालात है इधर। You have to do double the work and lower your expectations. My father used to walk down the street and there were signs saying no dogs and no, P word.
It was that bad.
It was very hostile.
Farzana Baduel, she's the founder and CEO of public relations company Curzon PR.
There are a lot of people who I met here कि जो generation अब बड़ी हो रही है, they don't want to connect with Pakistan.
I think it depends on what exposure you've had in Pakistan. Because, Pakistan, ऐसे मुल्क है that it's a country of millions of stories.
Yeah.
And the stories that I had exposure to were inspiring and uplifting and made me feel very proud of my connection to Pakistan. Others, they see stories of perhaps poverty or corruption or strain within families, and then they think, well, actually, that's not a Pakistan I want to be associated with.
PR वाला idea कहाँ से आया? I want to set up a PR company.
The way that I am, I'm very curious about things I don't know anything about, so it drew me into this world. At the time I was 30 and I thought, I'm not going to get a job in public relations. So what I'll do instead, which is what my parents' generation often did, that when they felt they couldn't get into something, they set up their own business in it. And it wasn't because I had the arrogance and the confidence, it was a lack of confidence that I set up the business.
How difficult was it as a female working in the PR industry?
All of us, we have a set of privileges that work for us, and we have a set of liabilities. Some people would want to work with you because you're a woman, others will want to work with you because you're a man. And the world is big enough to find people. So if these people don't really see the value in me, then I will go out, travel as far as I can to find the people that do value me.
There's a new sort of a trendiness around thought leadership.
I think about 10 years ago, people were using thought leadership, and then now it's become a bit embarrassing because the majority of people who designate themselves as thought leaders speak absolute bakwas and have nothing of interest to say. If you're Steve Jobs, fine, you're a thought leader.
Yeah.
But for the rest of you, just shut up unless you've actually got a decent thought to say.
How did overall social media landscape have changed the whole PR world?
Look what's happening in the White House. It used to be just legacy media coming for the briefings, and now you have influencers coming. It's rapidly changing because I think influencers, they have an emotional resonance.
So if I'm a podcaster or a content creator and I want to get a business or a brand deal, where is the gap?
I think that it's about your...
Farzana, thank you so much for taking the time out. मुझे भी I think कोई हफ्ता हुआ है London आए हुए, and I thought I was going through a lot of profiles of the British Pakistanis, और मुझे बड़ी कम ख़वातीन नज़र आई उसमें, and you were mashallah one of them who did a lot, and especially in a very interesting and different field, I would say, because comms and PR is slightly something इतनी ज़्यादा ख़वातीन हमें नहीं मिलती. So maybe we can start a little bit of your background, where you're from, आप कहाँ पैदा हुई, and journey कहाँ से शुरू हुआ basically.
ठीक है सर, मेरी जो पेरेंट्स वो कश्मीर से हैं, मेरे अबू और मेरे अम्मी पिंडी से, और इधर ही आए थे, एंड सो मैं इधर पैदा हुई थी लंदन में, और काफ़ी ज़्यादा उस ज़माने में काफ़ी रेसिज्म थी, और हमारी जो कम्युनिटीज़, हम काफ़ी क्लोज्ड कम्युनिटीज़, हम इधर हम बस अपने लोग के साथ आने जाने रहते थे, और इसलिए लोगों काफ़ी हॉस्टाइल एग्रेसिव उस ज़माने में. और फिर फिर मैंने यूनिवर्सिटी गई थी, और यूनिवर्सिटी मैंने स्टडी की थी इकोनॉमिक्स एंड मैथ्स, एंड और फिर I left actually after my second year, and I set up a business. And like a good desi girl, I actually went into accountancy. Or so for तकरीबन 10 साल मैं ये tax business को I was running it. And
but कहाँ से interest कहाँ से, where did you get the interest for the tax, because that's a very unique sort of a business. Were you good in numbers?
Not really. Well, I studied statistics and maths at university. Both मेरे जो अम्मी और अबू दोनों qualified. They both were accountants.
Okay.
And so and also when you're young, you don't know much of the world. So, and we were quite insular. So हमको बस मुझे बस सोचती थी कि अच्छा मेरे माँ बाप accountants हैं, मेरे uncles और aunties पत्नी कोई वकील है, कोई restaurant run करते हैं, और मेरी जो options थे were just people around me. And پھر میں نے سوچا کہ اچھا مجھے کھانا نہیں پکانے آتی ہے سو میں ریسٹورینٹ نہیں چل سکتی ہوں, مجھے خون نہیں پسند ہے سو میں میں ڈاکٹر نہیں بن سکتی ہوں, اور اور میں بنوں گی اکاؤنٹنٹ, اور مجھے کافی پسند ہے اس لیے اکاؤنٹنسی بہت اچھی ٹریننگ ہے. اس لیے آپ سارے بزنسز کو دیکھتے ہو اور دیکھتے ہو کہ کوئی بزنسز کیسے رن کرتے ہیں, کوئی بزنسز کتنی پروفٹ مارجن ہے. سو میرے خیال میں اکاؤنٹنسی, لا, اکنامکس بہت اچھی گراؤنڈنگ ہوتا ہے ان لائف. اور پھر 10 سال کے بعد میں تھوڑی سی بور ہو رہی تھی, اور پھر میں نے کہا تھا میں اور کیا کر سکتی ہوں. اس لیے اور پھر میں نے سمجھا کہ شاید میں پالیٹکس میں جاؤں گی, اور میں کنزرویٹو پارٹی کو جوائن کی تھی, اور ادھر انہوں نے مجھے بہت اچھی پوزیشن دیا کہ ان کی ایک بزنس فورم تھی, اور میں ان کی وائس چیئرمین آف دا بزنس فورم, اور مجھے اتنی مزہ آیا, اتنی آسانی سے کام ہو رہی تھی میرے لیے. اور میں نے کیا تھا 2-3 سال, پھر میں نے سوچا کہ مجھے پولیٹیشین کی کام نہیں پسند ہے, اس لیے اتنے زیادہ اگریسو, ہاسٹائل, اور میں نے سوچا کہ ایکچولی بہائنڈ دا سینس مجھے زیادہ پسند ہے. اور پھر میں نے سمجھا کہ میری جو پاتھ ہے از پبلک ریلیشنز. مگر جب میں پالیٹکس میں گئی تھی مجھے پتہ بھی نہیں تھا پبلک ریلیشنز کیا. میں نے کبھی نہیں کسی کو ملے, کسی دیسی لوگ نہیں چاہتے ہیں پبلک ریلیشنز میں. اس لیے اس زمانے میں بس اکاؤنٹنگ, ریسٹورینٹ کا بزنس, یہ وہ کافی کم.
And this is 2000.
Well, I was born in 77.
And then when you started the PR.
So میں نے اکاؤنٹنسی بزنس شروع کیا تھا in the year 2000.
Okay.
اور پھر میں نے PR بزنس شروع کیا تھا in 2009.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you were growing up, جیسے آپ نے پہلے بھی کہا کہ, اور ویسے بھی میں سننے میں آتا ہے اس ٹائم ریسزم بہت زیادہ تھا, پاکستانیز لائک 70s 80s 90s میں زیادہ آنا شروع ہوئے. ابھی بھی چیزیں ہیں تھوڑی سی, بٹ لائک اسٹل آئی تھنک ایٹ دیٹ ٹائم. So what was the environment back then? Like now when you look back and compare that from today.
کافی خراب تھی. مجھے یاد ہے کہ جب ہم لنڈن میں رہ رہے تھے, یہ جو ریسس قسم کے لوگ ہوں ہمارے گھر کے باہر میں وہ گالیاں دے رہے تھے, چیزیں ہماری لیٹر باکس کے گندے چیزیں وہ پھینک رہے تھے. اور پھر پھر اگلے دن وہ مجھے سلام کر رہے تھے اسکول میں. سے عجیب سے اسے جب وہ اکٹھے ہوتے ہیں اور پھر شراب پیتے ہیں, اور پھر وہ سوچتے اچھا ہم لوگوں کو تنگ کریں گے. سو افریقن وغیرہ لوگ یا دیسی لوگ وہ ہم کو بہت تنگ کرتے تھے. اور
And they were far right or like a general sort of.
far right, مگر اس زمانے میں ایکسیپٹیبل تھی.
That was a normal like norm. Okay.
سے میرے ابو مجھے ہم کو بولتے تھے کہ بس یہ ہماری حالات ہے ادھر, کہ آپ لوگوں نے you have to do double the work and lower your expectations. مگر ہماری جنریشن ڈفرینٹ تھی. اس لیے ہماری جنریشن سوچتے تھے کہ اچھا یہ اکوالٹی بزنس یہ لوگ کہہ رہے ہیں سر ہم کو نہیں, اٹ ڈزنٹ اپلائی ٹو اس. پھر ہم نے کہا تھا کہ ایک یہ سوسائٹی بولتے کہ اکوالٹی بہت امپورٹنٹ ہے, لیگل ریپرزنٹیشن, کافی وہ لیجسلیشن آئی تھی لائک اکوالٹی ایکٹ اینڈ سو فورتھ. پھر ہماری جنریشن میں کہا تھا کہ نہیں ہم نہیں دوبارہ ہم نہیں کریں گے ڈبل دا ورک اینڈ ایکسپیکٹ ہاف دی آؤٹ کم. سو ہماری جو جنریشن تھوڑے سے ایکٹیوسٹ قسم کے تھے. ہمارے ماں باپ وہ بہت ہارڈ ورک کرے تھے, اینڈ their focus was survival and putting food on the table for us. And ان کی اتنے انہوں نے sacrifices کیا ہماری جنریشن کے لیے. اور پھر ہماری جنریشن نے سوچا کہ ہم برٹش سٹیزنس ہیں, ہم ادھر ہی پیدا ہوئے, ہم کو چاہیے یہ رائٹس. اور بہت انکریڈیبل دیسی لوگ انہوں نے بہت ایکٹیویزم کیا. اور آج کل جب ہمارے بچے ہیں ان کے لیے حالات بہت بہتر ہے. مگر it hasn't gone away. Like پچھلے سال.
But do you think still it's? I mean, like what happened in Birmingham?
Yeah. پچھلے سال race rights آ گیا. اور and for me it was almost flashback to the 80s.
Wow.
Yeah. So these things don't always go away. Logo tribal ہے to a certain extent. You can't always diminish that. اور جب economy سے نہیں جا رہا ہے, پھر the hate comes up again. And it's happened in history time and time again.
Also, like when you were growing up, like us time, because you were second generation, आपके parents आए.
Yes.
Like आपके जो parents थे, how were they connecting you with Pakistan? कि identity भी ना भूले. अभी जैसे हमें देखने में आता है, people take their kids, go to like Kashmir and like all these places. So when you were growing up, what were sort of they doing?
Well, first of all, you know, I wasn't allowed to socialize with friends, really.
And what was the reason? You mean with the Gora friends? Because,
yeah, with Gora friends. And I think it was, you know, I think थोड़ी सी वो डरते थे, fear of assimilation.
Okay.
You know, fear of you'll go that way, not this way. And so हमारी socializing हमारी cousins के साथ थे और अपने लोग के साथ थे. और फिर हमारी जो बस स्कूल आने जाना बंद.
Okay.
दोस्तों, you know, खराब दोस्तों उनके साथ, you know, आने जाने नहीं, unless they're desi. And
they were like that strict.
Yeah.
But they have to, because...
Yeah. But also bear in mind what they went through. Like, you know, my father used to walk down the street and there were signs saying no dogs and no, you know, P word. And...
It was that bad.
It was very hostile. It was very hostile. My generation didn't suffer anything compared to our parents' generation. I mean, our parents' generation, I have huge respect for. They were warriors for us. They were on the front line.
Or abhi, like when, again, like fast forward like a couple of decades, how you are raising your like sort of kids and like, you know, जो अभी के लोग हैं, वो अपनी families को कैसे raise कर रहे हैं? Like, are you guys still trying to have some sort of a relationship with the country? Or is it like more sort of open mindedness, like nahi, theek hai, if you don't want to be Pakistani or British Pakistani, it's fine, you can be a Gora. You cannot be like a fully Gora, but like still, you know what I mean.
I mean, jab main idhar thi, we, other than mixing with British Pakistanis and the Pakistani community and socializing with cousins, we didn't have that much exposure until my family said, chalo, go and live in Pakistan. So it was a full immersion because it wasn't just go for 1 week and have some dal chawal and come back. It was go there and stay for 1 year.
Wow.
So I think मैं 12 years old थी at the time, and Pindi में मैं रह रही थी.
You lived for a year there. Wow.
Went to school there, learnt my tutti putti Urdu there, and
but how was that experience? Because 12 saal yahan guzar ke, then you were like going there.
It was a shock because when I went to Pakistan, I thought, oh, इतने अच्छे मकान है, नौकर चाकर.
Yeah.
I thought, इन लोगों की जिंदगी इतनी अच्छी है. Obviously, middle class, you know, family, you know, different there than others. But I thought they had it made. I thought, you know, my mother was slaving away in the kitchen, and then when I saw my aunties in Pakistan, they were like, you know,
you're the queens.
Chai banao, ye wo, you know, and so I thought they live a very nice life. They're not the ones, you know, rushing, buying food, cooking it, cleaning the kitchen, and then rushing to work, coming back, doing the school run. And I thought the life of the women in Pakistan, I thought, very good. And then I realized that Pakistan mein itni zyada socializing, you know, weddings, aana jana. London mein bas kaam itna, it takes so much out of you that you don't have the energy then to cook and clean for guests to come. So what I saw is the Desi people living in London at the time, we lived quite solitary lives in a way because we didn't have that. And whether you have money to have servants or not in Pakistan, if you don't, it was your community would step in. You know, you'd have a joint family system, you'd have in-laws, you'd have people helping you. Whereas in the UK, it can be quite lonely. And therefore, I think that there's a lot of mental health issues that happen because people are isolated. You know, young women have children and they have to juggle the children, looking after the husband, you know, and often working as well. And Pakistan, I thought, oh, they have it quite well. They have it quite, the exposure that I had, I thought they had it really, and just, you know, lavish weddings. I never saw anything like this, you know, and then the beautiful clothes and, oh, it was eye-opening. And I felt that they were sophisticated. I felt that they were erudite, they spoke beautiful English and Urdu, and there was a sense of culture. And it just, I had a very eye-opening experience living in Rawalpindi. And in a way, I kind of learnt the art of living, whereas when I was living in the UK, it was just study or work. And it was as binary as that.
But then did you send your sort of, in your family now, did people like send their children?
They do, and some send them for holidays, and I'm planning to send my daughter as well. And
how old is she?
So she's 16, and so I thought I'll wait before I immerse her.
But she also wants to go as well?
She's desperate to go.
Oh, wow, okay.
But she already knows so much about Pakistan. She follows on TikTok. So, with these kids on social media, they watch YouTube videos, they watch, TikTok videos. So she already understands a lot. And she...
and she wants to connect with Pakistan.
100%.
Okay. Because there are a lot of people who I met here when I was living here as a student, generally in the US and other places, कि जो generation अब बड़ी हो रही है, they don't want to connect with Pakistan. Like they want to feel like more of a British or American.
Yeah.
But do you think is it mixed or is it different? Maybe I'm not right.
I think it depends on what exposure you've had in Pakistan. So, for instance, when I go to Pakistan and I meet my relatives or my friends, and they have amazing lives and they do interesting things, and I just... and I find them quite inspiring. There's other friends of mine that go to Pakistan and maybe they see a different side of Pakistan. Maybe they have to go, I don't know, straight to the village. I mean, I personally love the villages in Pakistan, but maybe for them they, prefer the city or the village, or maybe they don't find their relatives or their friends there, as inspiring as I have been fortunate. And so I think it depends on what exposure you have, because, Pakistan, as a mulk hai, that it's a country of millions of stories. And the stories that I had exposure to were inspiring and uplifting and made me feel very proud of my connection to Pakistan. Others, they see stories of perhaps poverty or corruption or strain within families, and then they think, well, actually, that's not a Pakistan I want to be associated with. Or either unki jo narrative kafi kharab hai about Pakistan. There's a lot of Islamophobia. So kafi logo jab... When you live in a society where you're a minority, sometimes psychologically you internalize the racism and you end up not only self-loathing yourself, but you project that onto the country of origin, and you project that on the community as well.
And then going back, so you did your bachelor's, wahan se aapne taxation mein, you started your business. And PR wala idea kahan se aaya? Like I want to set up a PR company as a British Pakistani woman, which is I probably उस time पे तो शायद PR was also not like really trendy, या people लोगों को समझ भी नहीं आती होगी. Still in Pakistan, like अभी भी, like if you tell someone like I run a PR agency, like उनको लगता है कि अच्छा आप क्या लोगों को मिलवाते हैं या क्या करते क्या exactly?
Well, in politics at the time, Conservative Party, हमारी जो leader था David Cameron, and he's a former PR man. And मैंने सीखा है कि ये in politics में सब कुछ is about public relations, because it's the perception that gets you voted. So the perception directly leads to power. And then I made that connection and I thought, what is this world? Invisible world of public relations. And I was really intrigued. And with my background as accounting, which is very binary, it's about numbers, it was a completely different world. And the way that I am, I'm very curious about things I don't know anything about. And I didn't know anything about it. So it drew me into this world. And at the time I was 30 and I thought, I don't have experience in public relations, really. Politics is different.
And you haven't worked in any PR company?
Never worked in public relations, never studied public relations. And then I thought, and I only knew one person in public relations, and I thought, I'm not going to get a job in public relations. So what I'll do instead, like a typical Desi mindset, which is what my parents' generation often did, that when they felt they couldn't get into something, they set up their own business in it. So that's what I did. And it wasn't because I had the arrogance and the confidence. It was a lack of confidence that I set up the business, because I didn't feel as if mujhe nokri milenga public relations mein. So maine ye public relations dost mera, I said, hum dono business startup kare aur aap mujhe sikhaएं और मुझे आती है businesses कैसे run करें. And the public relations co-founder of mine called James, he didn't know how to run businesses. He didn't have the
So
accounting
it's a
background.
perfect like sort of match.
Yeah. So that's how it all started.
And the first 6 months, wo kis tarah ke the? Was there any sort of investment
Yeah.
did you guys put in, or is it like more of a team of two? Let's start getting clients.
Well, I kept my tax business running
Okay.
because it paid for the office and it paid for the staff. And then I used the resources of the tax business to run the PR business on top. And then I only sold the tax business when the PR business was strong enough. So I ran them parallel because I couldn't afford to.
And for how many years? Like dono ek saath?
2 years.
Okay.
2 years. And so it was the first 6 months, bahut mushkil tha, because in a way we were the blind leading the blind. He was a PR person, but a little bit more marketing, and we didn't know what we were doing. I certainly didn't know what I was doing, and I was thinking like an accountant.
Yeah.
And I think Taqriban took me 10 years
Wow.
to master. Well, not to master. You never master anything in life, especially public relations. It's always moving and changing. It took me 10 years to be confident enough to walk into a room and feel that I know what I'm talking about.
और नाम कहाँ से आपको कंपनी का आप लोगों ने रखा?
So because I was sitting in a flat off Curzon Street, and काफ़ी ज़्यादा law firms, PR firms named the PR firm after a location, a street, and Curzon resonated. And I was such a ignorant person at the time. I didn't realize why it resonated, and obviously because the subcontinent, and before I was like, oh, that feels really familiar. Yes, I'll have it Curzon, without having any idea of what Lord Curzon did, at the time in British Raj. And then I thought, yes, that sounds familiar and resonates. And then I did it. There wasn't any deep thinking behind it, and so we called it Curzon, and off we went, and it was 15 years ago.
Wow. And who were your first like sort of big clients? And how were you guys like pitching, like practically speaking? Like what was the process?
So when we first started, most of our work came from my co-founders' network. और वो काफ़ी creative आदमी था. So interior designers, artists, cabinet makers, and so काफ़ी creative लोगों. So वो जो काम थी बहुत मज़े का काम थी, मगर इन लोगों के पास कोई पैसे नहीं था. And so we were literally just, living to work. And
what were the services like in the start?
Originally, it's media relations. Because उस ज़माने में social media was just taking off. And काफ़ी लोग सोचते थे कि ये बस, fly-by-night operation, social media. And so back then, वो बस हम media relations वो कर रहे थे. So we were trying to get them into media coverage. We were also doing events, so event management, and then award submissions. And so those were the three bonds. And then we started doing speaker opportunities as well. And then for 2 years, we were floundering, just making mistakes, one step forward, two steps back. I think at one point my husband said, maybe you should put yourself out of this misery and go back to, accounting. But I just loved it, and it was that passion, that drive, that curiosity that I just thought, this is my lane and this is my path in life and this is my purpose. And I don't care how long it's going to take me. I don't care how painful it is. I want to do it. And so the first decent client was actually my co-founder left after 2 years because he was headhunted for a big tech job, and he said, I love this, magar there's no money in it, and we're not doing well, and I've got a mortgage to pay. So he left after 2 years, and I was devastated because I loved.
Then
working.
you need to learn like khud se.
And I was lacking in confidence, and so but then weirdly enough. Within months of him leaving, we got our first big client, which was the Ukrainian government.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you get that client?
So we were pitching for a jewelry business, and we didn't get it. And because they wanted an office in Dubai, because they wanted to tap into the Middle East market. And the lady said, you're not right for this, but I know exactly what you're right with because of your political background. And then got me to meet the Ukrainian government when they came to London, and then a week later I was on a plane going to Kiev, signed the contract, and got my first contract for a government.
And how long is the contract?
It was a year contract,
Okay.
and it was soft power, so cultural diplomacy, so promoting Ukraine through arts and culture, launching their first inaugural biennale, so a big visual arts, and it was fascinating because, for me, I understood the British culture, I understood the Desi culture, the Afro-Caribbean culture because of my friends. Never came across the former Soviets. I thought, who are these people? And it was fascinating going there.
And how big was your team at that time when you got this contract?
I think it was small, maybe 7 of us.
And you didn't have obviously the experts on that. Like, so you got the contract and they're like, okay, we'll figure it out how to execute.
And the lady that brought me in, she was Ukrainian. So she said, I will help you navigate the culture and I will help you. And so we ended up working on it, and it was just fascinating. And I love travel. I love people. I love politics and government and soft power. So it was an ideal project. And in life, when you're trying to establish credibility, you only need one.
Yeah.
And once that happens, it's like dominoes. Then everything else becomes easier.
And how difficult was it, like, as a female and then as a British Pakistani female working in the PR industry? Do you think was there a bit of a benefit as well because of a very diverse sort of a background? और फिर like उसमें क्या फायदे आपको नजर like थे और क्या मुश्किलात आई?
I think, all of us, we have a set of privileges that work for us, and we have a set of liabilities. Some people would want to work with you because you're a woman, others would want to work with you because you're a man. Some people want to work with you because you're British Pakistani, others would want to work if you're just a British person. Some would want to work if you're old, young. Everyone has a whole spectrum of prejudices, and the world is big enough to find people.
Your own tribe, basically.
Yeah, the people that you resonate with. So I never get. I try not to get bitter and twisted, thinking, I've got this issue and this issue and this issue. Because actually, I just think, if these people don't really see the value in me, then I will go out and travel as far as I can to find the people that do value me. And there is a big old world out there, and you don't have to stay in one country or one sector. Go and find the people that will celebrate you and would want to work with you. And I haven't, but I have a very positive mindset and very sort of glass, full. So I just think if somebody didn't choose me, I don't sit there and go, oh my God, life is so unfair. I'm just like, okay, let's go next. And it's a bit of a numbers game. You have to knock on lots of doors, and then eventually some would open. But I can't think of that many instances of sexism, and sometimes you don't know why they don't choose you. Sometimes you think maybe just our ideas weren't good, or maybe sometimes you've got to take self-responsibility. It's nice to know that actually they didn't choose me because I'm a woman or Muslim or Pakistani, but maybe they didn't choose you because actually you're not that great for that particular project.
A lot of people don't think that,
right?
Yeah.
So then I sort of always ask for feedback. And I don't always go to the automatic default of ye log prejudice hai. I go to the default of how could I have done it better? And I think that mindset is what drives excellence.
And how did the overall PR sector, especially in the UK, changed over the last sort of 2 decades or like 1.5 decade?
So हमारी जो industry इतनी diverse नहीं है, and there has been a lot of campaigns to make it more diverse, and it hasn't really worked. हमारी industry का काफ़ी मुश्किल है, इसलिए first of all, it's not diverse in terms of ethnic minorities, in terms of Afro-Caribbean or British Asian. It's not diverse in terms of socio-economic. I think 6% of the country here is privately educated, and I think they're represented in the PR industry. I think 30%. Wow. So overrepresented. So it's a very middle-class profession, very privately educated. And so I think that's one thing to bear in mind. And it's one of those jobs where back 15 years ago, you couldn't get in unless you had experience. And you couldn't get experience unless you worked for free in an internship. You can't work for free in an internship if your family don't have money to sustain you to work for free. And that reinforced the socioeconomic barriers. So British Pakistanis in the UK, उनकी काफ़ी financial तकलीफ़ें हैं. So automatically they have the barrier that they can't. First of all, there's not that many of us in the industry, so usually we go into industries that we see role models. But two, if they do decide to go in, the question is how they're going to financially sustain themselves. But luckily, काफी campaigning थी हमारी industry में, where we then said that we then made it a sort of a shame for companies to give free internships, and we raised awareness. I didn't. I'm acting as if I took the credit. The industry did, and then now actually everyone gets called out if they do free internship, and people are aware of the link of free internships and the lack of diversity. So the industry has changed. It's become a lot more aware about what impacts the lack of diversity, and there's a lot more diversity initiatives in the industry. One that I set up with my co-founders for Asia Communication Network last year. You got the Black Communications Network as well. The other thing that's changed is पहले हमारी जो काफ़ी services but focused on media relations, and then all of a sudden social media, and then all of a sudden SEO, and then all of a sudden focusing on the strategic side, because both fragmented the communication landscape. Before it used to be patni 2 or 3 print media, 2 and 3 broadcast media, bus kafi simple, and you just needed a few contacts and you could do the work. But now it's completely different. You have influencers as well. So you have podcasts, and it's very fragmented. So there's so many channels of communication that you need to really sit and think before you do anything, and think, what channels should I choose, and in what sequence, and what messages go in which channels, and which audiences receive which messages and which channels. So we're moving from highly tactical to more strategic.
Also, like one thing I think which I've seen in Pakistan, and generally, at least in Pakistan, there is a new sort of a trendiness around thought leadership. Like, I don't know how is it here, but koi bhi CEO, like they want to be in that space, and they want to talk about certain issues and be an expert on things. How is like sort of thought leadership evolved like in the British market?
So,
और कब से आपको लगता है कि ये sort of a buzzword start coming into the market?
I think about 10 years ago, people were using thought leadership. And then now it's become a bit embarrassing, because now people say, when somebody says I'm a thought leader, people sort of cringe a bit, like, what a loser.
But why?
Because majority of people who designate themselves as thought leaders speak absolute bakwas and have nothing of interest to say, and they don't actually lead in thought. They just regurgitate reductive sort of words that they've scraped from other people, and it's actually very rare in life to come across a genuine thought leader. The fact is that we are just, we consume other people's thoughts and regurgitate it in a generic fashion, and some of us who are quite pompous think it's thought leadership, but the reality is that not many of us have original ideas, and there are very few and far between thought leaders, and so therefore people do roll their eyes when somebody says that they're a thought leader, and and it's become one of those words, like during COVID, unprecedented. It's become one of those words. It's like, just try not to use it. It's just overused, and it's a bit naff, and it's just a bit egotistical. So a little bit like social media influencers. They would call themselves, I'm an influencer, and people would be like, oh God, but now they call themselves creators, because it's just less of an ego play. And if you're Steve Jobs, fine, you're a thought leader. But for the rest of you, just shut up, unless you've actually got a decent thought to say. And, there's so much rubbish out there. People just spout off, not having anything original and interesting really to say.
And do you think social media also, like, उसने भी बहुत ज़्यादा इस चीज़ को ज़्यादा वो किया? Because now you have like space, you don't need to go to the TV or anything. It's just like you can say whatever, and the LinkedIn probably is some the place.
Well, before you had a filter. You have to get through gatekeepers of journalists to get your opinion piece, and you only had 2 or 3 print in every country, a couple of broadcasts. So the producers of broadcasts and the commissioning editors for opinion pieces were the gatekeepers and the filters of making sure the bakwas didn't come through and making sure the genuinely insightful ones did. Now there's no gatekeeper. Now everyone with a phone is just publishing away, and then even worse, now we have these LLMs, the large language models, so ChatGPT. So it's not even just pompous zero thought leadership coming out from people. It's coming out from their generic, ChatGPT. But may I say, I do use ChatGPT, and sometimes I think it's got better thoughts than my own, which is a bit disturbing. But it is extraordinary.
And how did like overall social media landscape or uske andar bhi like the influencers, like especially the last 5 years, have changed the whole PR world?
Well, I mean, fascinating. Look what's happening in the White House. So, Trump, for instance, President Trump is, it used to be just legacy media coming for the briefings. And now you have influencers coming. I mean, it's rapidly changing because I think influencers, they have an emotional resonance. And legacy...
It's a human-to-human sort of...
Yeah, and people, and even like audio, like podcasts show that audience, listeners, they build an emotional relationship with the host. It's something that they have in their ear, and it's actually very intimate. And whereas reading a dry newspaper doesn't have that same emotional connection, and we are emotional animals, and we all like to think that, oh, we're rational, we want to read legacy media, and we want to read a balanced narrative. But the reality is actually we pretend we're rational, but we're pretty much driven by subconscious desires and our emotional side of our brain, and we tend to believe people that we like the look of, that look a little bit like us, that we just, and we rationalize it. But actually a lot of who we choose to listen to and who we choose to be influenced by, a lot of it's not really in our conscious control.
But how do you think the PR now, like let's say if you need to look the next sort of 2 years or 5 years, the PR space is going to change? Because now let's say a student is coming out from a university, is setting up a company, ChatGPT is there, a little bit of contacts, he or she knows social media influencers, and you are running a PR company. Because not everyone is doing like too much of a strategic work. So how do you think the space is going to change the next sort of 2 to 5 years?
Different in different countries. I think one of the biggest issues that's facing PR people is ethics. One of the biggest issues in society is disinformation and misinformation. So disinformation is with intent, misinformation is without intent. And what we're beginning to see is you're having some countries taking let's regulate the hell out of this industry, what is going on? And the others are like, do you know what, it's not even a profession, just let it ride. You've got countries in Africa that are taking the lead, like Zambia, like Nigeria, that have regulated that if you're in the PR industry, you have to register. You have other countries where it's a free-for-all. You've got, in the UK, you've got the foreign influence registration scheme coming in, so PR agencies that are representing foreign governments have to give a certain level of disclosure because they're worried about state-sponsored disinformation. You've got increasing transparency required on lobbying registers. The UK is actually not very good on that, but but the industry is campaigning for better. So you have different countries doing different things. And yes, a lot of it is tactical, but with the AI tools, it's going to help the PR industry who are working on tactical to use the tools to do the tactical so that it frees up their time for a bit more of the thinking side. So I think what's going to happen to our industry is that we're going to have these brilliant AI tools, and that's going to bring in a golden era for the PR industry that's going to finally allow us to have time to think and be strategic, because actually it is a very strategic discipline, but it's just that we never got the budgets from the clients to think things through. And that it was just like do. And all the time was eaten up by just the doing part. We didn't have enough time for the research, for the strategy, for the planning, for the measurement, for the evaluation, which is normally wrapped around delivery. But now with the AI tools, that's going to really help us, I think, with our critical thinking as an industry and providing more value and hopefully moving up into the board level.
And you guys also like worked a lot with the creators and influencers and the podcasters.
Yeah.
Where is the gap in that market right now? And again, in terms of the business side. So if I'm a podcaster or a content creator and I want to get a business or a brand deal and things like that from an agency, like where is the gap in the British market, which you think we should do, whoever is like listening right now?
I think that it's about your audience, and a lot of creators have a great number of followers and listeners. But if those listeners and followers aren't of interest to the brands that have significant budgets, then it's not going to be really helpful. So what you need to sort of almost figure out is a bit of a mapping exercise of this is what your audience is. what sort of consumer, what's the big ticket items or big consumer ticket, that they, are sold to, and then work your way backwards. I think, and also bear in mind, it's not just about followers. Like, for instance, PR people like us, we've realized that there's a higher ROI with micro influencers than you get with macro influencers, number one. Number two, we're worried about credibility. How much of it is organic? How much of it is inorganic? Has the YouTube been put a lot of money behind it to boost the subscribers, and actually they're disengaged because they were paid subscribers as opposed to, finding them through serendipity or whatever. I think the third piece is about understanding brand positioning. Like if you are contentious in a certain way, then brands may not want to engage with you. But likewise, you have challenger brands that would be like, you know what? That's the kind of people that we want to work with. So kind of like thinking a bit more about brand adjacency is very difficult. I mean, to make money as a creator, because you've got the overwhelming majority of people aren't, and then you have, it's like winners take all. It's like there's a few winners that take all, and it's a little bit like actors. Very few make it. Top models. It's one of those creative industries that everyone wants to get into, but the reality is that it takes a lot of hard work, bit of luck, and a tiny proportion make it to the top. And even if you look at podcasts here in the UK, there are thousands of podcasts, but actually the majority of people, just the sort of top 10 podcasts.
And a lot of them also quit like in few years.
Yeah,
or maybe.
because they don't have the money to sustain. And it is really hard. And also back in the day, podcasts were quite amateur, but now production values are so high that people really want a higher production. They demand a lot more from audio, because the ones that are taking all the money and the sort of branding, they're the ones who have got such good audio and such good production and such good planning that when people then listen to the other sort of podcasts that don't have the same level of resources, it's really hard to cut through. But podcasts like the ones in the UK, like The Rest Is Politics, is so good, but they also understand that they do live events as well. So it's not just
so there's a whole business model around.
Huge, and they feed off each other. So you got to make sure that you are featured in legacy media. You got to make sure you do a number of events, you do speaking and gigs, and you change it up as well. So, but it is very much a winners take all. And you don't know where a podcast is going to come from. You get celebrities that do podcasts, like for instance, you had sort of Meghan in the US, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if you are a big profile, it's going to translate into an amazing sort of listener base. So you need more than just profile.
And in the British diaspora, like how many podcasts or like influencers are in the industry, like just from the diaspora sort of side? Is it a big market or?
Well, it's a bit different because a lot of the British Asians here, the older generation would be tuning into like Sunrise Radio and reading sort of Eastern Eye, and these are amazing media outlets that have served our community for decades, and we're very indebted to them. But then the younger generation would be tuning into BBC Asian Network. The BBC Asian Network has announced a number of cuts. And so, unfortunately, there is, I think, an opportunity for British Asians to have these, for new entrants to come into the market, because the budgets have cut. BBC Asian Network, Sunrise Radio, and Eastern Eye do a fantastic job, but it's difficult for them to straddle two generations. And I think there is an opportunity, especially for Gen Z and the millennials, for somebody who speaks directly to them. So there's opportunity there. So let's see who gets there.
And in the British Pakistani sort of circle, do you guys have a lot of influencers or creators, or is it like a bit? It's not much.
I think everyone's in their different lanes. You've got, for instance, beauty influencers who are big on Instagram. There are British Pakistanis like Amir Khan, who a lot of people look up to and respect, not only for his craft in terms of sport, but also foundation, charity work. I would say we're still probably, I can't think of one that comes to my mind as anyone that, all my friends who, religiously follow. But I think there's an opportunity for people who are listening, go for it.
Yeah. And lastly, like if anyone wants to now come into a PR industry, if they're like studying or something, do you think there is money there? If you want to, one, like work for someone, or like if you want to start your own business?
I think it depends on which aspect of PR you go into. If you want to have fun, go into consumer PR.
Okay. Which is like if you can.
So it's like fashion, luxury,
Lifestyle, basically.
Lifestyle. I would say, if I turn back the clock, in my 20s, I would have gone into consumer PR. I would have had the time of my life, and I would have met lots of people, and I would have worked in fashion and travel and art, and I did all of that actually, to be honest. But that was more in my 30s. And then what I would do is realize that consumer PR can be a bit ageist, because people often like PRs who are close to the next generation coming up, because they feel they've got a better pulse on the trends. And so in your 30s, you may want to move from agency to in-house, because when you start having a family, agency can burn you out unless you really like that. And in-house is a much more gentler. You're not juggling lots of clients, and it tends to be a bit more gentle in terms of work-life balance. And then in terms of where the money is, it shifts. But generally the money is in financial PR, corporate PR, and government PR. And it is also if you look at the services, it tends to be in the ones that are less commodified. So it's the strategic services. So strategy, crisis, extremely high. I mean, people pay anything when they've got their back against the wall. So some of the biggest hourly rates are crisis PR specialists. And a little bit like, doctors, for instance, you earn more if you specialize. If you're a jack of all trades, you'll be a commodity.
So basically niche is the new sort of thing which you need to...
Yeah, but don't niche too early. Be like what we call a T-shaped practitioner, because then that helps you think strategically rather than just think in silos. So spend your 20s, being a bit of a generalist, and then find your niche specialism, and then in your 30s sort of go niche. If money is important for you, specialize in strategy, specialize in crisis, specialize in government relations, in public affairs, and then also focus on either agency or in-house. I think building your agency is great, but it's really hard, and you have to really love it. I mean, I worked 7 days a week. I mean, there's not many people who have the sort of work ethic that I have. And I only have this work ethic because I genuinely love it. I genuinely would prefer to work than sit in a spa or go shopping or I don't know what.
But what makes you work so hard?
I think it's probably being a daughter of immigrants. Both my parents were exceptionally hardworking. A lot of the older generation were very hardworking, and I think that even though I rejected it consciously of work twice and expect half, probably it seeped into my subconscious that actually you constantly need that external validation. I don't know why I work hard. I enjoy it. I don't have any work-life balance whatsoever, but I absolutely love what I do, and I have got zero desire to retire. And if I had all the money in the world and I didn't need any money, I would do it for free.
Wow. Yeah, not many people, I think, say that. So
I wouldn't
you're
change
quite
a
lucky,
thing. I love my clients. I love my colleagues. I love my craft. I love my industry. It's fascinating. You're constantly learning. You've got these incredible. You've got AI now coming through. It's a fascinating industry. Fascinating.
Farzana, thank you so much for taking the time out. Really appreciate your time. And I think it's quite an interesting conversation for Pakistanis, as well as if there are a lot of, I think, British Pakistanis will be looking at that.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.